Okay, if you saw Winnie-the-Pooh, Blood and Honey, really, the only good time was because of the theater experience. Now, Blood and Honey 2, or Electric Poogaloo as I like to call it, has arrived. There's a noticeable jump in quality with the prosthetics and gore. But how about that story? Not wanting to live in the shadows any longer, Winnie-the-Pooh, Piglet, Owl, and Tigger take their fight to the town of Ashdown, leaving a bloody trail of death and mayhem in their wake. So, first thing to know about this is it sort of retcons the first movie. We get new backstory on how the animals came to terrorize the 100-acre wood, as well as how Christopher Robin fits into all of this. But with that, the current film, it doesn't neglect or discard the schlock that created the budget for this film. I mean, it actually celebrates the first movie and uses it within the storytelling in tiny ways. Everything in this movie, it is improved. The acting, where we have now characters who can convey some emotional investment, and that doesn't mean everyone is awesome, but even our main characters, I mean, sometimes they veer off the path of good. But there is development and backstory to create a connection, and then a couple of them, they're even endearing. Then there's the story itself. First, I mean, there actually is a story. We're taken on an emotional journey of loss and regret, all while entertaining mysterious elements and character arcs that have depth. I was genuinely surprised with the storytelling, and not because I went in expecting Pooh and it mildly surpassed that. There's thought and progress built into the narrative. Characters are given motivations, as are Pooh and his friends. They're not just mindless slashers out to draw blood. I mean, there's rationale, and it makes complete sense within this world. And not to be outdone by the first installment, the prosthetics, makeup, special effects, and gore, they are light years better this time. The masks that create the faces and the heads of Pooh, Piglet, Owl, and Tigger, they all move with different facial expressions. I mean, there's no more Pooh with this confused and dumbfounded expression. Instead, we have menacing looks with razor teeth and then blood-red eyes. And then, of course, all sorts of bloody drool dripping from the mouths. And while the kills in the first movie, they were fun and they were brutal, here, the filmmakers have quadrupled down to deliver squirm-inducing grotesqueness. And we're talking vicious beheadings, pummelings with appendages, traps, falls, and then all sorts of claws. And when the camera shows us the carnage, it is just nasty with sinew dangling and blood streaming. There are a couple of portions when we don't really get to see the violence being inflicted, but instead watch a silhouette of someone going ham on their victims. And this is okay in small doses, but a few times towards the end, I would have much preferred to see all of the bodily mayhem rather than just, a character's outline waving and grunting while people are screaming all about and losing their heads. And the action is right in line with all of the popular slashers. The characters have that slow and dreaded walk as they go after victims with just fear and tension looming over the whole environment. Now, I loved how Pooh and his friends just slowly clawed after their prey. Well, I mean, except for Owl. He's way more nimble, and then he's quick, too, which adds its own set of ruthless actions. But they also wield all sorts of savage weaponry. And I'm not just talking about their claws or their talons. The 100-acre friends, they pick up whatever's around them. Be that a branch, shotgun, somebody's arm, heck, even a chainsaw. I mean, the visuals are so much fun to watch. And just wait till you see the chainsaw. There is an effect with it that I don't think I've seen done before, so the creativity was wonderful. The characters also speak more, which I know runs the risk of becoming laughable and stupid, but because of the voice work and how it matches with the visuals, the dialogue we get is threatening and chilling. I mean, sometimes, it is still a bit dumb and it creates some laughs, but on the whole, the dialogue is more clever and it works to complement the story rather than make the whole thing just a running punchline. Now, Marcus Massey, he's the one who voices Owl. He has a tremendously ominous presence. Now, while his current filmography is not stacked with A-plus titles, he fully understood the assignment of crafting a character who is meant to strike fear in anyone who hears his voice. I was also surprised to see Simon Callow in this. I mean, his character adds a bit of mystique and dread, but also creates a bunch of plot depth that builds out the world effectively and efficiently. Now, he doesn't have a huge role, but what he does bring elevates the tension. And while I enjoyed the story a bunch, it isn't flawless storytelling. Several portions drag out the narrative and put a halt to the pacing. We watch some conversations between Christopher and his parents, and they're supposed to convey trepidation, maybe even relived trauma. But what ends up happening is we get a scene where characters come across as though they've kind of forgotten their lines or maybe just lost the context of the arc, and they're kind of ad-libbing their way through until they can reconnect their trains of thought. And there are also a lot of plot conveniences built in that allow our characters to move across locations way faster than they really should, or maybe to get out of certain situations when others in the exact same type of scenario are instantly offed. Now, these weren't bothersome for me, and while they didn't always make sense, there weren't enough of them to just make it seem like the show or the story was really cheating us. Now, I've mentioned this before, but the story contains an air of mystery involving Christopher and the Woodland Pals. Now, I think the answer to this mystery will become pretty obvious before it's revealed, but even with that, I was invested in the tale, and the more detail we got, the more impressed I became at how rich this story really ended up being. Now, in case you weren't aware, the producers of both the Blood and Honey films, they're creating a horror universe with upcoming films that feature characters like Bambi, Peter Pan, and Pinocchio. And as you watch this movie, you can catch some subtle nods to the characters within the Poohniverse. Yeah, seriously, I mean, that's what it's actually called. But after seeing how much an improvement this received over its predecessor, I'm fully in for the rest. Now, something a little strange to say is that the audience experience for this movie wasn't as animated and lively or even fun as it was with the first film. I think a lot of that has to do with the absolute ridiculousness and absurd stupidity that was contained in Pooh 1. It was easy to laugh at the terrible dialogue and the vicious kills because there was barely a story and none of the characters were redeeming. But for Electric Boogaloo, there's quality to the story, and we've got characters we can be invested in. So while there was some laughing because, just the extreme violence and then some of the abruptness of the brutal actions, I wasn't laughing at the characters or the film. I was laughing along with the jokes, even if they were off color, because they were inventive and competent. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I had a blast with this movie, but in a totally different way than I did with the first. I walked out of this one impressed and then excited for what's to come. So overall, Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 elevates its game in terms of plot, character design, acting, and emotional attachment. Even though the first movie was retconned with this entry, the two films work in tandem to build a violently inhuman landscape that delivers gore, savagery, and heart amidst a staggering amount of bloodshed and dismemberment. The future of the Poohniverse is solidly secured with this fresh entry, upping the bar in story quality and gruesomeness to ensure a unique round of fairy tale horrors that will fire on all cylinders. There's no sex, some nudity, a lot of profanity, then, of course, an obscene amount of barbarous violence. I give Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 3.5 out of 5 couches. So are you excited to see this one? Did you watch the first movie? What A.A. Milne characters are you hoping to see make an appearance in one of the upcoming movies? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.